So this is the last of the 70 weeks videos that I'll be making. And before you listen to this one, please go and listen to the week's introduction video, because I show you how I came up with this timeline and why I used 1967 as my base for counting. The other video that you need to see before this one is called about the Jubilees and the Shemitahs. And if you listen to that one, I'll show you how Adonai counts his days and weeks using scripture. In fact, they're actually the book of Daniel. Well, Daniel and Leviticus, to show you how Yehu counts his days and weeks. So both of those are important to understand this. You see, this is week 1 all the way through week 70. And we're going to show you significant things that happened throughout this 70 weeks. Those other 2 videos are really short, maybe 7-10 minutes, something like that. So please go listen to them first so you can understand why or how I came up with this. This is the way God counts his days and weeks. This is all the way back to creation, and like I said, using 1967 as my base for counting. So you see, this is all the way down here from creation down to the 70 weeks. This is week 1, 1484 through 1435. You can see this is 8, 15, 22, 29. Of course, there's week 30, the week that Yeshua was born. Then 43, 50, 57, 64. Boy, you guys are so far off. And then week 70. You can see this is 2024 here. You see that? We're no longer even in the 70 weeks. So yeah, we're just gonna let this one hang out at 70 weeks, I think. So, because there's stuff I'll be showing you about that in a few minutes. But anyway, like I said, this is week 1 all the way to week 70, and I'm going to be showing you significant things that happened throughout the 70 weeks. I don't have everything listed. Like, for instance, I didn't add in anything before Yeshua was born, as I saw no need to. I will leave a blank timeline in the description box so that you can copy and paste it and throw in what you like. So anyway, I'll make this video as short as I possibly can, because it just irritates the crap out of me when I see people sit and babble on and on and on and on about things and seem like they're never going to get to their point. And a lot of times I'll just sit there and scroll through till I find something, and then it's like, then I cut it off, because I don't listen to everything that everybody says. Otherwise I'd be terribly deceived. But anyway, we're going to get started here. One of the first things that Adonai told us to do when we got into the Promised Land was that we were supposed to keep a Sabbath. This is Leviticus 25:2, speaking to the children of Israel, and say unto them, when you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto you. So, first of all, I want to point out this is a Sabbath unto the Lord. It's not, our feast days, our Sabbaths. And God says these are my laws, these are my feast days, my Sabbaths. So I don't know where you get that these are Jewish things. We didn't do it. Yehu did it. He said that they were a Sabbath for him. So anyway, like I said, using 1967 as my base for counting, that's how I got this. Week 1 would have been 1484 through 1435. Remember, we went backwards then, BC. And that Sabbath we celebrated in 1484 would have been the beginning of our 70 weeks. Remember that passage? Is it in Daniel 9? 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. So this is not only the Jewish people, but also Jerusalem. You cannot have this prophecy until we have Jerusalem back. Our 70 weeks is not up. To finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. This is not the Temple Mount. or the temple. This is God himself. We are going to anoint our God as our king or ruler. So you people are so far off, it just makes me, not Yeshua, but God himself. Believe me, I have another video about that when he call Yeshua God, even though Paul says in Corinthians that when Yeshua, takes over everything and he's, got it all under his feet, that he's going to turn the kingdom back over so that God, Yahu, can be all in all. But you say that Yeshua is God. Where's Yeshua going to go if he's God? He's going to turn it all back over to, he's what, just going to blend into God's body and just disappear? Don't think so, people. But anyway, that's a completely different video. We'll get to that one in another video. So anyway, like I said, that began for 70 weeks. Our first week would have been 1484 through 1435 BC. And as I said before, I didn't throw in anything before Yeshua was born. You go on the timeline, add what you want. So I'm skipping down to week 30. This is week 30 would have been 34 BC through 17 AD. This is a week of the Jubilee cycle, of course, when Yeshua was born. I haven't done the research to figure out his birth and their death dates yet. I guess somebody has, but most scholars put his birth being between 2 and 4 BC. I don't know which date that was. So week 31 would have been 18 through 67 AD. Of course, he died in that week of the Jubilee cycle. And then, of course, week 32, 68 through 117 AD. And this was the week. 70 AD was where the second temple was destroyed. Haven't seen anybody who disagrees with that, but I mean that sounds like the right date. And now we're going to move on to week 43. Now you can see that these are the 1,335 days, 1,290 days, 1,260 days. So in week 43. It says, it said this verse, this is the Jubilee cycle of the week in which the Muslims or the Gentiles, and we know that the Gentiles are the Muslims because they are the ones who have had the land this whole time, for years and years and years. But this is a week in which the Gentiles or the Muslims first took control of the Temple Mount. According to the Jewish Virtual Library, that's what this website is. The Jews say, I guess it would be different according to, if you were listening to a Muslim tell it, but according to the Jews, the Jewish Virtual Library, the Muslims have had control of since May of 638. So, according to Adonai Yahu, it wasn't 638, but 632. This is Daniel 12:12. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 days. It's 1,335 days. So if you take 632 and you add 1,335 days, you get 1967. Remember, we have to get Jerusalem back before our 70 weeks is over. And that's what happened that year in 1967. And we'll get into that a little bit better later on in this video. But 1967, we had the 6-day war. The Muslims attacked, and they lost East Jerusalem, which included the Temple Mount. How they ended up keeping it is, I don't know. I don't know why they let them keep it, but God gave it back right there. So, like I said, that was week 43. And then week 44 would be 668 through 717 AD. So, if you go on to week 34 or 44, this was the week of the Jubilee cycle in which the Dome of the Rock was constructed. So, there was, before there was like a little wooden building that the Muslims used, and the Jews were actually allowed in there during that time. But once the Dome of the Rock was constructed, it covered the Temple Mount. So, like I said, week 44 would have been 668 through 717 AD. And according to the Jewish Virtual Library, they took control of, they built the Dome of the Rock in 680. But again, according to what you showed me, it was 677. When they finished building it or whatever. And of course Daniel 12:11 says, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there should be 1,290 days. So if 677, like I said, they say 680, but what he showed me was 677. 677 plus 1,290 years equals 1967. Again, 1967. When we won that war and took the Temple Mount back. God gave it to us. So, I don't know if the people, it looks like to me, because every time they attack, they end up losing more territory. It looks like they would just quit fighting. Quit trying to kill off the Jews, because they're not going to succeed. And every time they attack the Jews, they lose more land. I wish they would just stop all this killing. It's just ridiculous. The Jews are not trying to hurt the Palestinians. They're not. But the Palestinians, because they're indoctrinated from small childhood to hate the Jews. And half the time, I wonder if they would if they knew that Hamas was no longer a threat to them, if they would just quit fighting the Jews and learn to live peaceably. Because, how do you fight people or protect people who, Hamas, stands there behind the Palestinian people and fires missiles over into Israeli area. So when the Jews the Jews fire their missiles back, what do they hit? The Palestinians that are standing in front of Hamas. So it's just ridiculous. I wish that there was some way to take all the Palestinians out of Palestine for just a little bit, let them wipe out Hamas, get rid of the tunnels, and then bring them all back, help them build it. And if they would stop trying to kill the Jews, then they would learn to live peaceably, and they would have free access back and forth. They wouldn't have to be a wall or a fence between them. But I don't know, maybe they only, because they're afraid that if they, say that the Jewish people aren't bad people or whatever, that, Hamas would kill them deliberately. They wouldn't fire missiles, they'll use them as shields, they would just kill them themselves. Because you're not allowed to associate with Jewish people. But that's just neither here nor there where this timeline goes. But anyway, I feel bad for the Palestinians. But they were the ones who hired Hamas to rule over them. And technically it wasn't them, because this was back in 2006 or so. So a lot of the people, we're talking a lot of years ago. I feel like standing here counting how many years back that was. But anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off on that. So, like I said, once the Dome of the Rock was constructed, we no longer had access to the Temple Mount, so the sacrifices were definitely stopped there. And, it is just, I don't understand. Well, the church tells you that the abomination occurs when some man walks into the third temple and declares himself to be God. That's one thing that irritates me so bad about Renee Moses and her stupid rapture puzzle, is because she says that the abomination occurred when Obama walked into the Church of the Holy whatever it was called and put an end to the sacrifice of praise and worship, which is complete blasphemy, because we know that the sacrifices were stopped because Yeshua died. And God gave the Gentiles, the Muslims, the Temple Mount to keep us from offering sacrifices again. God did that himself, people. Wasn't a permanent thing, just till the War of Desolations is over. But, we're going to get further into that a little bit later. So anyway, once they had control of the Temple Mount, we no longer were able to offer, because there was, the sacrifices were to be performed in a specific place. We couldn't get there to offer the sacrifices. For those, I'm sure that most people do know by now that the Muslims mark this as the spot where Muhammad took his night journey to heaven. So it's just like a really holy site for them. So that's the reason for all of the Dome of the Rock and everything. And there were many people who lived in that land at the time, Jewish rabbis and such, who stood there as they watched this thing being constructed and actually said, this is the abomination. So, look into it, guys. Just look into it. You'll find it. Of course, you got to be careful. You never know what you're going to hear. People say all kinds of crap. So anyway, also in week 44, again, it was 668 through 717 AD. Al-Aqsa Mosque was completed on the Temple Mount. History puts it being built somewhere between 705 and 717, but again, according to what Adoniyahu showed me, well, first let me show you this. They say that it was between 705 and 717, somewhere around there, that Al-Aqsa Mosque was completed. So what Adoniyahu showed me was 707. This is Revelation 11:2. But the court which was without the temple, leave out, measure it not, for it's given unto the Gentiles in the holy city, shall they tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. That's 1,260 years. So if you take 707, like I said, they said it was between 705 and 715. But 707, and you add 1,260 years, you get again 1967. So that was the year that we got Jerusalem back. Now, we're going to keep going. We're going to now move on to week 60. Now, like I said, I am not showing you everything that happened. There will be far too much crap in between all of this. I'm just showing you the major keys and the key points. Week 60 would be 1468 to 1517. This was the Jubilee cycle of the week in which the New World, or the Revelation Wilderness, was discovered. It happened in 1492. People think that this hasn't happened yet, but it already has. Sorry, guys, y'all are deceived. So anyway, we're going to go to week 62, and this is where it gets good. This right here, week 62. Oh no, that was this one here. It says, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem at 2, this could also mean until the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. That's 69 weeks, but the total of the 62nd week. After 62 weeks shall Mashiach be cut off. So that's what we're looking at, the 62nd week. That's what we're looking for here. So week 62 will be 1568 through 1617. I'll admit that this one stumped me because I couldn't figure out this whole Mashiach would be cut off thing. The church had always said that this was referring to the death of Christ, and if this timeline that Yehu showed me was accurate, then that means that the church is lying. Had nothing to do with his death. So I searched aimlessly, starting with 1617, going backwards because I thought it would happen at the end of this week. But then he told me one day, he said, you're starting on the wrong end. So I went to the other side, 1568, and I just kept going through the years, typing in Palestine, AD 1575. And when I got to, or Palestine, whatever year, and then I got to 1575, and I typed that in, and guess what should pop up there? Because I went through every year, 1568, 1569, 1570, finally came to 1575, and that's what I said. I typed in Palestine, AD 1575, and Elijah the prophet popped up there. It was the most amazing thing. There's times when Yehu was showing me things, I would be sitting there with chills all over my spine. You just, wow, God, you're so awesome. So what I want to show you is this. This is from a thing called Messianic Good News, and the article is entitled "The Saddest Day in Jewish History," and I'm sure that y'all know that the Jews consider, I think it's Tish B'Av, something like that, that's supposed to be so devastating. But this article is talking about the day or the whenever Mashiach was actually cut off from us. That was the saddest day. And I read this whole article, but when I came to this part right here, I knew that this is what Yahuwah was trying to show me. It says, what a stark contrast to that glorious vision of the 53rd chapter of Isaiah, that God had laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was stricken. And he goes on to say how providential the affirmation at the hand of the eternal and almighty of the oft-quoted words of Rabbi Eliyahu or Elijah Davidus. 1575, he said this in 1575, which was in week 62. So let's finish reading that because it is pretty awesome. Rabbi Eliyahu or Elijah said, the meaning of he was wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquities is that since the Messiah bears our iniquities, which produce the effect of his being bruised, it follows that whoso will not admit that the Messiah thus suffers for our iniquities, must endure and suffer for them himself. So this is where Yeshua was cut off. Before Yahuwah does anything, he'll have a prophet declare it, and that's exactly what Elijah was here for, was to declare the end of the covenant. So anyway, I want to read two things to you. This is the one from Daniel, where it says, says, after 62 weeks, Daniel 9:26 says, after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. I want to show you the definition of this word cut off in Daniel. The word is karab, Strong's H3772. It says to cut off, cut down, cut off a body part, cut out, eliminate, kill, or cut a covenant. And there it is again. It says to cut or make a covenant. As opposed to the one in Isaiah where y'all try to use his death. That verse says, he was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation, for he was cut off out of the land of the living. That word cut off is completely different. The word is gazer, Strong's H1504, and this one just means to kill, cut off, exterminate, destroy. In other words, this is actually saying that he died, but the one here is saying that the covenant was cut. So it's something completely different there. So you can't use the cut off in one passage to apply it to the other passage. It's two completely different words meaning two completely different things. And there's nothing in the Bible that tells us that we will have to acknowledge Yeshua in some fake 7-year tribulation. He doesn't tell us that we're going to suffer in the afterlife. If we break his commandments, he says we're going to suffer in this life to the point of death where he has to kill us because we don't keep his commandments. So I don't know why the church sits there and tells you that you're going to suffer in hell after you die, because death is the end. It's the end, and nothing happens in the afterlife. It happens here. He punishes and punishes and punishes, trying to warn us until we either start keeping his commandments or he kills us. We're not supposed to be dying. We're supposed to be living forever, and these bodies made of dirt, but because we don't keep his commandments, we die. So anyway, back to the timeline here. From that point on, from the time that Elijah made that declaration, let me point out that if you look up Elijah Davidus, you'll see that he was a student of a Rabbi Moshe or Moses Cordovera. And people like to talk about the two witnesses or whatever, Moses and Elijah, but they were here together in 1575 in Elijah's 62nd week, and Elijah made that declaration. Besides that, we're told in the Revelation that John would have to eat the little book because he had to prophesy again before many nations and peoples. People miss that. So I don't know who this John is going to be, but John is obviously one of the two witnesses. Elijah and Moses were here in 1575. So Yehu spent the next 7 Jubilee cycles, or 7 weeks, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, moving the ones that he wanted over here to the wilderness on the wings of a great eagle. That's what the passage says. America was that eagle, people. Here. He moved us here to keep us from dying in what was going to take place over there. So Aaron was to take 2 goats and place the atonement on one and send him into the wilderness, and then the other was sacrificed at the altar. This is Leviticus 16. It says, Aaron shall bring the bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself. And wait a minute, that's not the one. I need to read 21. And Aaron shall lay both hands upon the head of the goat, the live goat, and confess over him all the iniquities of the children of Israel, and all of their transgressions and all their sins, putting them upon the head of the goat, and shall send them away by the hand of a fit man into the wilderness. And the goat shall bear upon him all their iniquities into a land not inhabited, and he shall let the goat go in the wilderness. And America was that wilderness. That's where he sent the ones that he wanted to spare from what was going to happen in World War II. So I want to read you the definition of 2 words, and that's why I was back up here. This verse right here, I want to read you scapegoat and wilderness. So the word for scapegoat is Azazel, and I have actually heard people saying that God made an offering to some false god here. But the word Azazel is H5799. This is entire removal. In other words, he took the atonement and placed it on the goat, on the Jews that he sent here to America, to the wilderness. He put the atonement on the ones that he sent here. And then the other word that I want to show you, well, that don't really matter. I was going to show you the definition of the word wilderness, but it just means an uninhabited land. There were tribes of Native Americans here, but basically the whole country was uninhabited, except for patches of areas where there were some Native Americans here. But anyway, so after many years of searching through this stuff, I've come to realize that most of the early settlers here in the New World were Jewish immigrants chosen by God himself to bring the atonement here to the wilderness. And America, like I said, was that wilderness. So now we're going to move on to week 68. Week 68 would have been 1868 through 1917. World War I began here in this week or Jubilee cycle. The Brits defeated the Ottoman Empire and took control of Israel and Jerusalem. And later that year, the Balfour Declaration was signed, and I'm sure y'all have all heard of that. It was just to basically give the Jewish people a home of their own. Like I said, I'll put links to all of these in the description box so that you can see them. But like I said, that was the year that the Balfour Declaration was signed. And I want to show you this according to, and I've got these all divided out by the 50-week Jubilee cycles. Look at this. 1917 was a Jubilee year. So that's when God began setting up his kingdom again in 1917. So then we have week 69. Week 69 would be 1918 through 1967. And I want to say before I go any further that people have been fed a pack of lies by their religions, and I'm not isolating any one denomination. I'm speaking of all religion and the whole church, because every single one of them is based on half-truths and man-made garble There's just enough truth in every religion to keep us on our current path to destruction, and enough lies to keep us fussing and fighting and judging, warring, even killing, all in the name of God. And God, my friends, has nothing to do with any of these religions because He is not religious. So you can just dump your religion and save yourself out of a world of trouble. But anyway, in 1969, again, this was week 69, 1918 through 1967. People have made the grave mistake of thinking that the punishment week is the 70th week, but it's not. It was the 69th week. The 70th week was supposed to bring the kingdom in, and I'll explain to you in a few minutes why that didn't happen. As a matter of fact, if you'll see my video called Daniel's 2300 Years, that explains it more thoroughly. The slaughter of the Jewish people actually began around September of 1941. It went from 1941 to 1945, so there literally goes the first half of your so-called 7-year tribulation period. So, World War II, there was the punishment. I don't know if I want to say it's the time of Jacob's trouble, but it was definitely our punishment for rejecting the Messiah. The war ended in 1945, and then 3 years later, in 1948, the nation of Israel, Israel was declared a nation again, and the Jewish people also declared their independence that year. And then, of course, we move on to week 70. There's a lot that happened in week 70. Oh, I forgot to mention that also in week 69, after the war ended, the 6-day war happened where they got Jerusalem back. So I forgot to mention that in week 69. So, now we're going to move to week 70. Like I said, the kingdom should have come in 1967, but it didn't, because, and if you'll look at that week, it says in the middle of the week they'll break the covenant. God reestablished His covenant with the Jewish people in 1967 when He gave them the Temple Mount back. Like I said, every single time that the Muslims attack the Jews, they end up losing more land, so they really should just stop. But they should have, started, taking control of something then, but they didn't. If you look at week 70, it's 1968 through 2017. The middle of that week would have been 1992. But in 1991, they had the Madrid Conference. Now, I want to show you, because it says that they couldn't. Well, actually, it says, let me read this. On March 6, 1991, President George H.W. Bush told Congress the time has come to put an end to the Arab-Israeli conflict. Bush's declaration was followed by 8 months of intensive shuttle diplomacy by Secretary of State James Baker, culminating in the Madrid Peace Conference in October of 1991. The conference was co-chaired by Bush and Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. It was attended by Israeli, Egyptian, Syrian, and Lebanese delegations, as well as a joint Jordanian and Palestinian delegation. For the first time, all of the parties to the Arab-Israeli conflict had gathered to hold direct negotiations. Every single one of them were involved. It says a historically unprecedented event. But I want to show you what it says down here somewhere, if I can find it. It actually tells you that, if I can find it, I'm sorry, I should have had this pulled up already, that it didn't work out because between March, Palestine occupied territory, neither one of them could decide, could agree, so that fell apart. Because, the Jews stuck to what they wanted. Of course, their idea was they wanted to live, and the Palestinians, the Muslims, stuck to what they wanted, which was they wanted the Jews to die. So, that's basically the plot to it. But anyway, it actually tells that this didn't work. So then, in 1993, 2 years later, they started the Oslo Accord. There's another so-called peace process where this was in September of 1993. They gathered again in Oslo, Norway, and was trying to work out some kind of a peace process. Like I said, it didn't work either because the Palestinians don't want peace. Muslims don't want peace with the Jews. They just want the Jews dead. It's not going to be a two-state solution, I don't think. But anyway, I'm not going to read you this. Like I said, I will put this whole article, I'll link it in the description box so you can read the whole thing. So God gave them their land back in 1967, and they broke that covenant again, that renewed covenant, in the middle of that week. That was the last week. But then we have 2017. And what happened in 2017? By the way, I want to show you too that, look, 1917, where the Balfour Declaration was signed, was a Jubilee year. 1967, where they got Jerusalem back, and the Six-Day War was a Jubilee year. And then 2017 actually ended the 70 weeks. Now, what happened in 2017 that was a significant value? Donald J. Trump declared on October 6, 2017, he formally recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and stated that the American embassy would be moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So that was the end of it right there, guys. God put Trump into office just long enough to accomplish his will, which was to declare Israel, or Jerusalem, the capital of Israel again, and then took Trump back. And what else happened, though? This was the same year as the Great American Solar Eclipse, and it was called that worldwide. It literally moved in on one side of the country, touched no other country, came in Oregon and went back. I was actually standing in Simpsonville, South Carolina, and watched it as it went back off the other side into the Atlantic Ocean. And that was a declaration from Yeshua himself that the end of America had come. He was done with America at that point. So, there it is, guys. Daniel 70 weeks. Start to finish. Like I said, I'll put this in the description box, and you can copy and paste and add what you like. So, like I said, this is Daniel 70 weeks, according to what he showed me. And look again, 1917, the Balfour Declaration was signed. The Jewish people were allowed to go back home. Of course, 1948 was when they declared their independence and Israel was declared a nation again. But they got their land back. Here they got the Temple Mount back, but they threw it away in the middle of that week, and then Yeshua sent Trump to give it back to them again in 2017, all Jubilee years. And like I said, look, we're in 2024 now, so we're no longer even in the 70 weeks. This isn't a Jubilee year. The Jews try to say that this is a Shemitah year, but not a Jubilee year. Who knows if they'll wise up? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But the 70 weeks is over. It's been over for 7 years. So anyway, like I said, that's what he showed me, according to what he showed me, using 1967 as my base for counting. Because he told me that just go listen to the video, please, the introduction, and that explains it. And I'll be back soon with another one.